Hello everyone, my name is Ciara Quick, and for my cross-gendered leisure project, I chose to partake in the activity of basketball. Basketball has come a long way, but let's first begin with the history of the game. In 1891, James Naismith, a physical education instructor at the College of Springfield, Massachusetts, invented the game of basketball, then separated. Originally, the sport was created with men in mind. Basketball was designed specifically to keep football players in shape, occupied, entertained, and out of trouble during the winter off-seasons. In the beginning, the pace of the game was slow. Peach baskets were used as hoops, and the soccer balls that were utilized to play the game required manual assistance once scored to be released. Over the years, the rules and techniques of the game began to advance. By 1895, basketballs were specially made and used for the indoor sport. Backboards were placed behind the baskets to prevent crowd interference as well as apply accuracy, and adjustments were made to the original 13 rules to make the game more fast-paced and athletic. Quickly as time progressed, basketball spread and became widely played and well-known. In the early 1900s, basketball expanded to include college, high school, and of course, women's participation. Just how often did women play basketball? Women's participation in basketball surprisingly first began less than a year after the game was invented. In 1892, a woman by the name of Sandra Brenson, also a physical education instructor and a colleague of James, invented the game of women's basketball. The rules were greatly adjusted as to better accommodate a woman's fragile, petite physical frame and limited mental capability. Sandra Brenson supported women's progression, much so like the author of Gains and Gaps, Participation, Constraints, and Possibilities. She sought to develop a game that would be socially acceptable for the public, yet a simultaneous development towards better health, tolerance, and endurance for women, which she felt eventually would lead to equal wages in the work environment. In March of 1893, Sandra Brenson coached the first game of women's basketball ever to have been played. Now, let's take a look at the early disadvantages for women. Women were required to play wearing extremely restrictive outer and underwear, such as floor-length dresses, petticoats, and slippers, while practicing and playing. In fact, the only exposed parts of the body were to be the fingers, necks, and heads of the women, while men in comparison wore less formal and actual sports attire. The rules of the game were purposely changed to dramatically reduce the pace and athletics attributed by the women playing the sport. Parents forbid their daughters to participate, viewing the game of basketball as an aggressive, dangerous masculine sport that would lead to future health problems and conditions for the women. Most sports fans enjoyed the high energy and raw aggression of the men's basketball versus the women's. In turn, this is where the preference in men's basketball first stemmed from and why men's basketball truly is more entertaining than women's. As time progressed forward, basketball became integrated within our culture and participation within the sport was steady rising. By the 1950s, the Basketball Association of America, BAA, and the National Basketball Association, NBA, were amongst the first founded to establish leagues to compete nationally. Thus, teams such as the infamous Lakers were formed. The rules of the game had drastically changed compared to the original 13. Now the game of basketball required agility, strength, and physical length. 4 decades later, in the 1990s, the NBA agreed to starting a Women's National Basketball Association, WNBA, and women officially became a part of the sport of competition. Women in basketball today. Currently, women compete and are nationally recognized for their achievements. Whether it be in high school, college, professional, or the Olympics, women are a force to be reckoned with within the sport of basketball. The laws established and enforced by Title IX required all discriminant and unjust acts of funding and support based on sex, gender, and tradition pertaining to sports be prohibited. Title IX has proven to have had an influential impact in women's sports in general, not just in basketball. Now, equal funding, recognition, and opportunity is granted to both men and women, And because of a fairer playing field, women are much more involved today than ever before in sports, and women's participation is steady increasing from the number of the past. Current issues of women playing basketball. Although women are involved in the sport of basketball and are even dominant within it, such as Candace Parker, the first woman to dunk in the NCAA tournament and the winner of a gold medal at the Beijing Olympics, women's media coverage is significantly less than men's. ESPN, TNT, and other networks dedicated to the public broadcasting of basketball showcase men's basketball much more often than women's. As a result, when it comes to public funding, promoting, support, and following of the WNBA, college basketball, as well as high school competing leagues, it's minimal in comparison to their fellow men competitors. Oftentimes, men's game performances are used as a level of standard achievement for female athletes to reach and strive for. This only encourages and spreads the stereotypes associated to women basketball and implies a difference between the fundamentals of the game of basketball played by women and men exist. The evolution of the game. Basketball as a sport is consistently transitioning as time progresses. Extreme headway has been made for the now more than 300 million people playing the sport today. I think it's important to remember how and specifically why the game of basketball was first created, and then take into account the process of integration women have endured just to participate in the sport. Let's go ahead and examine basketball as a source of leisure and not just competition. The activity of basketball was originally invented to occupy and entertain rowdy young men during the winter. Basketball fits into the traditional ideals of a leisure activity for men because elements from soccer, rugby, and lacrosse were combined to create the perfect indoor outlet where physical contact was encouraged and a mental knowledge of a sport was required for these men. The qualities and characteristics of basketball are traditionally considered to be masculine traits. My experience with the cross-gendered leisure project helped me to better understand and relate to the materials covered in class. Physically partaking in the sport of basketball has exposed me to the historically feminist, cultural, and biological biases and differences associated to this game. Playing against and with fully grown men boldly displayed our biological differences. Witnessing the men's abilities and our physical differences, I began to wonder if the rules of the game, the ideal participants, and the recruiting processes might still be geared towards men versus the women. How about we take a look at my personal experience playing the game? I really had a great time playing basketball. My greatest challenge was physically keeping up with the guys. All the running and constant activity definitely was a workout for my body, but as tired as I was, I had so much fun. At first, I was kind of nervous to play because these men were really big. But the guys were so nice and supportive that after a while, I didn't feel as intimidated and I just let go and enjoyed myself. I learned that although many differences exist between men and women, both can have the same passion for the leisure and the sport of basketball. The guys invited me back to the gym to practice with them anytime, and I had such a blast. I think I might take them up on that offer. Go ahead and take a look at some of my highlights.
Go ahead.